This week, Paul Finebaum went on the McElroy and Cubelic show and was asked about the mood at UF. Actually, he was specifically asked about the mood in Tennessee and Florida when compared to each other, as well as the pressure that is on both coaches. I agreed with some of the things that he said, and I'm not sure that I fully agree with other things that he said. But I do want to play the clip for you guys and then share my full thoughts. But just before I do that, I want to hear from you guys. What is your mood right now? What's the mood around Gator football? On a scale of, let's say, 1 to 10, 10 being as ecstatic as possible and 1 being absolutely miserable, where are you at? Put it down in the comments below. Okay, let's listen to that clip.
Greg, everyone is whispering about Billy Napier. There's no reason to whisper about it. I mean, he had a terrible season. And, you know, no matter how many times his AD comes out and tries to say there's nothing here, there's a lot there. I mean, there's an apathy at Florida that concerns me more than the record. I talked to Steve Spurrier a couple weeks ago. He said, well, there's not much buzz going on around here. I talked to a reporter the other day. Said the same thing. I talked to a former player, Thaddeus Bullard, last week, and everyone's saying the same thing. There's just no excitement. I mean, there's almost an expectation now that winning 6-7 games is good enough. Well, you know what? It's not. This is year 3, and at some point you have to just accept whether you have the right coach or not. And until somebody can make a clear statement at Florida and a convincing statement, and then that mystery will be there. And the schedule has been hashed around by all of us many times. But it's really when your coach is under fire, the beginning of the season is critical. You can't come out of the gate losing. You can't get and they have a very tricky schedule with a lot of games that don't look that difficult, but are losable. And if Billy Napier starts out very poorly, the question is, can he make it to the end?
All right. So he is right that if Napier loses games to start the season, he may not make it to the Florida State game the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Think about this. Florida's first 6 games are easier than their last 6 games, right? This is kind of the same way the schedule set up this past season as well. Florida has the opportunity to be going into that Georgia game already having 5 or 6 wins, which is good because the second half of the schedule is daunting. But let's say Florida drops the opener to Miami. Let's say they struggle with UCF or Texas A&M, some of the earlier games that, we're counting, and when we look at this schedule as wins at this moment, things could go south for Billy Napier, and he may not make it through November. Now, flip side of that, right? Billy Napier goes into that Georgia game, let's say bowl eligible or close to it. He should get that bowl eligibility somewhere in the second half of the season. And I think that makes him safe for one more year. He's made changes to his coaching staff. It's one of the hardest schedules in the country. So what happens the first 6 games is probably going to be a pretty darn good indicator on whether or not Billy Napier gets 2025. Miami starts it off. You've got to think that this is the most important game of his career at Florida up to this point. If you win that game, a game that, it really has been one of Florida's rivals historically. That game hasn't been played a whole lot in the last 20 years, but prior to that, that was an annual bloodbath, a heated rivalry. And, this is a team we go head to head with against recruiting year in and year out. A win here, and you are taking a monumental leap forward, right? Cristobal and Miami are in the same situation that Billy Napier and Florida are right now, both going into their 3rd year, both pretty darn good recruiters, but have underperformed on the field thus far, both looking to take that next leap. If Billy Napier can beat Miami, that's huge. But the flip side of that is lose it and you put yourself behind the 8 ball during one of the toughest schedules that Florida has seen in a very long time, which honestly is saying something, right? Because Florida has a tough schedule every year. Okay, So back to what Finebaum said. When it comes to buzz, I mean, yeah, I guess he's right. But what does he expect? The team has had 3 straight losing seasons. The second half of the season last year, pretty abysmal for the Gators. What buzz is there for any program in that situation in January, right? Honestly, we are to the point where nobody's getting super excited until we see the field. But I do think that you can get excited still about Billy Napier's recruiting. He finished way stronger than the record indicates that he should have recruiting wise. Think about this. It is very, very difficult to out recruit your record. Florida had a losing season, 3rd losing season in a row. Unacceptable at the University of Florida. They missed a bowl game. Now you're 2 years into this, so it's getting harder and harder to sell that the ship is being turned around. But Billy Napier is doing that, right? His class is a top 12 class-ish, depending on which service you're using. And that's not including Grimsley, who Alabama wouldn't let out of their letter of intent, so counts as a transfer as opposed to a kid in this 2024 signing class. If he counts, Florida potentially has a top 10 class. And listen, I am not saying that a top 10 class is good enough to compete for championships, or the top 10 class is where we want to be as the University of Florida. But when you have a losing record, it is an incredible anomaly to end up with a top 10 recruiting class. It just doesn't happen that often. He's out recruited his record. He actually going to finish ahead of FSU, which should have Nole fans concerned, right? They just came off their perfect season. They just barely missed the playoffs. This is a team that should be having no issue capitalizing on the fact that both of their rivals in state are down in comparison, but somehow Florida State's getting their butts kicked not only by Florida, but also by Miami recruiting wise. So, Nole fans should maybe be concerned. Billy Napier hung onto the 2 mantelpieces of this class, DJ Lagway and LJ McCray. I understand that everybody wanted to keep that top 3 class that we had in October. I also understand that Florida's record makes that next to impossible to accomplish. I still think the fact that Billy Napier loaded up incredibly early in the cycle, he did this over the summer, right? He got all these guys to commit and then just kind of played defense during the season. That was the right strategy. How do you get all of those guys to commit to you when you're in the middle of a losing season? It's a lot harder, right? It's a lot easier to get guys that you already have these deep relationships with that are already committed to you to hang on than it is to convince new guys to jump on. And I think Billy Napier did a really good job of that. Like I said, if Grimsley had gotten released, this could have been a top 10 class. It wasn't top 3, but holding on to that was a pipe dream given the record. This is still an incredibly impressive recruiting class. I think Billy Napier is a great evaluator of talent. I think we're going to see these guys be major contributors. So recruiting wise, there is things to be excited about. And staff changes. He's made some changes to his staff. We got a new strength and conditioning coach. We got a new safeties DBs coach. We got a new defensive line coach. We got a new nutrition staff. We've gotten a special teams, we're not going to call him game changer, but analyst that has come in that's going to help support in special teams. There are changes being made. Now, is it all of the changes that some of us wanted to see? No, but it's also not our team, right? It's his team, and these are the changes that he thinks are necessary to move the program forward. We're kind of in a wait and see mode, right, to see if he is correct on that. And I think we're in a wait and see mode for the program overall. Spring is going to tell us some, right? We're going to see what players have developed in the weight room a little bit. We're going to see what players seem to be able to pick up the college speed faster than others. We are going to see some of these matchups. But honestly, until August hits, we are not going to know too much. I'll tell you this. Some of the fan base has already turned on Napier And that's cooled off some, I think, because it's January and how much are people really going to beat that drum? He's not going anywhere right now. It's January. But you are certainly going to see the passion and the buzz turn up from this fan base one way or the other come fall. It's going to be passionate one way or the other. Either Florida's going to come out the gate and they're going to win some games, and we are all going to be full steam ahead on that Billy Napier train. Or Florida is not going to win those games out of the gate, and you're going to see people jumping off. But it is going to be passionate one way or the other. It's on Napier and the team to figure out if that passion is going to be positive or negative. I honestly love some of the offseason changes that were made. I love some of the recruits that were brought in. I think he did a solid job in the transfer portal. I look for Florida to pick up a couple of more players, maybe a wide receiver, maybe a guard in the transfer portal when it opens after spring. But I like some of these pieces that he has in place. And I think that while the schedule is daunting, there are winnable games. Now, if Florida makes some of the silly mistakes that they made last season in these games, they could lose winnable games. But if they make some of those course corrections that some of them are not even major changes that make the difference between a win and a loss, this is a Florida team who could win 7 or 8 games. And I know 7 or 8 games is not what Florida fans want to win. That's not considered a successful season, but I think it's considered successful enough to let Billy continue to cook, to see what these recruits can do once they get in place and get a little bit developed. I think the entire mood of the fan base will change if Napier can get 7 or 8 wins next season. Again, I want to hear from you guys. Let me know what the mood is right now with Gator football. Looking forward to hearing from all of you in the comments. I appreciate you tuning in. And as always, go Gators.
Yeah.